I just finished reading this book that was handed to me from my business advisor, The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing, and it was written over 30 years ago, but the ideas in this book, you can really see how much they've shaped our world and the companies that exist today. And I even recognize a lot of strategies from this book are some of the principles we use to attract clients and stand out from our competitors. So this isn't going to be your typical book review of only sharing what I liked about it, what I didn't, and there you go. I'm actually going to share some of the principles within this book, some of the laws that I've actually seen play out in real life, so you can start to understand how you can use these to grow your brand or business. Okay, let's dive in. So quick context, this is written by Al Ries and Jack Trout. They are world-renowned as marketing consultants and strategists. They were, at the time, probably the world's best known marketing strategists and marketing consultants, and they released a few books. I want to note right off the bat, this isn't a how-to book. So if you're looking for something like that, it's not going to be a step-by-step, do this, do that for your marketing. It's really about how people perceive your brand and certain laws of marketing that help you understand how your audience would perceive your brand and why. So it's really more about the psychology than it is about the typical tactics and the way that we currently think about marketing. And I actually really like that because marketing is psychology in its most raw form. It's about changing behavior, right? But a lot of people don't see it that way. You know, marketing tactics will change, marketing platforms will change, but psychology, for the most part, and what we understand about changing human behavior, these are principles that have stood the test of time. So let me give you some examples of these laws. One of my favorite ones is the law of focus, which is on page 26. And it says here, the most powerful concept in marketing is owning a word in the prospect's mind. So this chapter goes on to talk about if you can find, as a company and a brand, if you can find a way to own a particular word in your prospect's mind, then you are going to win. And he gives certain examples, like, for example, IBM, you think of computers. Hershey's, you think of chocolate bar. Heinz, you think of ketchup. Crest, you think of cavities. And so they really encourage you to think about what is a word that you want to be known for. And you don't want to go broad here. You want it to be very specific and you want it to be memorable, especially if you're a smaller company, right? If you're not a leader in your industry, then you have to go more narrow and more specific. Whereas the big companies and corporations, they can own a word like cavities or computers. So this was a really cool one because it got me thinking and, stirring up some creative ideas of like, oh, what do we want to be known for? What are the words that are associated with what we do? And I just made a list of those words. And just from doing that exercise, there was more clarity around like, oh, we should be focusing. This is the law of focus, right? We should be focusing on talking about this one thing over and over again so that people start to associate us with YouTube, and specifically, even more narrow, YouTube for business. I'll share another example with you. This is another one. It's called the law of opposite, page 50. And it says here, if you're shooting for second place, your strategy is determined by the leader. Now, what that means is if you have some competitors in your space, you know that they're dominating your space right now, and people look up to them, they'll go to them first, likely. What this chapter is talking about is maybe consider going for something completely opposite than what your competitors are going for. So you may be offering similar things, the products might be similar, but if you can find a way to go for something completely opposite than what they're going for, that can work to your favor. And I'll give you an example from the book here. So they give the example of Coca-Cola and Pepsi. Coca-Cola has been around forever, right? For a very long time. I mean, the brand itself is nostalgic, right? It caters to people who love that nostalgia about it, who associate having a nice Coke with a good time. So they're generally catering to an older crowd because these are the people who grew up with a lot of Coke in their youth and that sort of thing. And so it was interesting because they said, using the law of opposite, Pepsi totally reversed that. They offer something very similar, right? But to become the choice of a new generation, it says, they went after youth, and heavily in their marketing from their ads was all about the new generation, the youthful generation, They got Michael Jackson and these other celebrities and stuff that the youth at the time was, looking up to. They got them in their ads. And I'm not saying we don't have budgets like that to put in our ads, but it is something to pay attention to, because usually when we look up to our competitors, we try to emulate them and do the same thing, go after the same thing of what they're going after. But it will work more in your favor if you go after something completely opposite. And that's the positioning, right? That's the perception. People will perceive your brand differently. The type of market or the type of audience is just one way to differentiate yourself, but there are so many other ways. So, I could go on and on and sharing more of these laws with you, some of my favorites, but I found myself reading a chapter, which are really easy, like they're just a couple pages, super bite-sized. After reading a chapter, I would make some notes, and notes that apply to our business and brand. Now, I do want to say there's maybe like 2 laws in here that feel kind of outdated. And sometimes when reading through this, you get the sense that it's just for corporate companies and stuff, because those are the examples that they use. They use examples from these big corporate companies. But despite them not using more relatable examples, I think what needs to be done is we need to reinterpret these laws from a small or medium-sized business lens and apply them to how we operate in today's day and age. The principles are the same and are still relevant, again, with the exception of maybe like 1 or 2 laws that I personally think are a bit outdated. So what should you do with this book? Like, besides reading it, obviously, don't just read this book. Use it as a lens to audit what you're currently doing in your marketing and maybe come up with some new creative ideas for what you can change or what you can try out. So if this review has resonated with you, I've linked to the book in the description below so you can check it out, and would love to hear your thoughts on this book after watching this review. Drop me a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video. Bye.